Oh, yeah. Now I need to. You're good to go.
All right, I'll call the meeting to order. This is a meeting of the City of Albany Historic Resources Commission. We invite or welcome our participants viewing on YouTube, as well as those who are here in attendance this evening. My name is John Myers, I'm the chair of the commission. In attendance this evening is Commissioner Pinckney, Commissioner Kaplan, Commissioner McEnany, Commissioner Garrity, and Chris Keck from the law office, who's counsel for the commission deliberation this evening. We do have a quorum. We are expecting at least one more member of the commission, but we thought it would be prudent to get started basically on time. So I will call the meeting to order, declare we have a quorum, and we can proceed with these are all public hearing agenda items this evening, so these all require a decision by the commission, yay or nay. So with that, we could start with 48 North Pearl Street in the downtown Albany Historic District.
We have somebody doing it electronically,
Sorry?
a member.
No,
No,
Okay.
they should be,
Aaron
Aaron Tobin and Chris Hacker, yeah.
And Chris?
He will be here shortly as well.
Okay,
Thank you.
good to go full house very soon.
Good evening. Danny Sanders representing 48 North Pearl Street LLC. We had a meeting last week on site, and Mr. Myers, Mr. Pinckney, and Aaron were there walking the site, and we had a very productive discussion with the owner. And I think what we came up with was a modification, of course, to our previous proposal at the workshop, and more of a subtle addition to the to the third story of it, with a two-story addition on top. We've modified the plan elevation from the last presentation, and essentially also added the north elevation to the presentation to give the overall four sides of the addition. With that, the minor changes really were the modification of the color, turning the corner with the same tone of treatment from North Pearl around to the north and south elevations, namely Pine Street, and with the ribbon window effect of the North Pearl Street addition to the more prominent exposure on Pine Street, we feel that that sort of reflects the addition a little bit more consistently with what we did on Pearl, and treating the building and the project more as a corner entity on a prominent street, of course. Other than that, the second floor and third floor, although we did discuss some possibilities of some changes, pretty much stayed the same as was previously. The fenestration design on the fourth and fifth floor of the grayer section on Pearl Street, facing Pearl Street, was more reflective of the window rhythm and fenestration on the existing building. If we could just go back to that one more time, I'll just mention that. It just ties in a little bit better as a reflection of the function of the hopper windows, but also some fixed units. And that's really what's down below on the existing building. And other than that, I'm open to any questions or discussion points.
Erin, are you able to pull that photo up that I'd asked you that we saw quite a while ago? So this building's date of construction is 1947, and it's in the expanded district boundaries, which it was not when we saw the previous project. And I recalled, and Erin, I hope we'll be able to find it, a very compelling photograph when the part of the presentation when the district was expanded of this building. And although I think that the treatment of the Pine Street elevation is a lot of improvement there. My opinion is that anything as an addition that comes this far forward onto Pearl Street has essentially an adverse effect on the historic nature and the mid-20th century character of the building. And I'm not talking about 1 foot, and I'm not talking about 2 feet, and I'm really not even talking about 4 feet. What I'm talking about is an addition that has its front elevation quite a ways back, so that the integrity of the original 1947 building, the essence of which is here, is really what is seen and what is observed. So that's quite a change from a plan, and also of course therefore the elevations, although the character of treatment of the elevation on the Pine Street facade could be continued or could be retained. But the challenge that I have is really how far forward the addition comes on the east elevation. And I believe that it does violate the historic character of this building. And we too have to start to wrestle with our mid-20th century buildings. And we don't have that many. This is one that was specifically included in the expanded district. And that's my concern. There's a photograph that we're trying to find that I think
For whatever reason,
no, there was a really nice early one. Okay.
this is what was in the nomination report.
Well, thank you for looking. I don't know if anyone else recalls that
I might have one.
image, but
It's an older one that was back when it was flawed.
it was flaws. I think it had the flawed signage on it.
Yeah.
But the essence of the form is there. Not here in this not in this proposed rendering, but in the existing conditions as a 3-story building. Granted, it's been altered, and therefore I think, as I said, the treatment on the Pine Street elevation does seem appropriate to me and kind of nicely detailed as it comes to the corner. But this for me is problematic.
Well, I know at the last meeting here, I had recommended pushing that east elevation back further, and Dan said that it couldn't be done. I do agree with you about pushing it back because generally rooftop additions need to be further back, no matter how historic the building is. It just tells you that I'm not original. It's pushed further back in my opinion. When John and I were out there, this seemed appropriate. With his setback, maybe he can set it back even more. We agreed that there were some differences and that it did blend very well.
And I don't dispute that it's, the detailing is appropriate as an addition. I think by definition, the addition on this elevation is problematic.
site, I mean, there were some discussions about pushing it back. And there were some reported structural issues, plus it changes the economics of the building. Not that that should be an overriding concern of ours, that's an overriding concern that belongs to the developer to make the project work. But, I tend to agree with Lee that, it certainly, if it were back a little further, it would be certainly, more acceptable. But in its current form, it's back a foot. I mean, it's back the thickness of the wall, basically, which is probably noticeable, but not, I don't know how you make a greater differentiation if the possibility of moving it back is really a major stumbling block for the project.
I would argue that a foot is absolutely insufficient, that from ground level, I could barely see it from here.
Yeah.
So conceptually, if that whole lighter gray piece, that farthest bay was gone, and the full two-story addition started way back, that nicely detailed wall, then I think it's a concept that I could approve.
So you would even.
That I could, I'm sorry.
You wouldn't even go with 2 feet.
What, 20?
Yeah, that's what she's saying. That's what-
So whether it's a hardship and that takes a different course, we know what that is, that's what our regs tell us, but I think the challenge of what happens with this mid-20th century building, it's important, and we don't have that many, and that foot or 2 feet, or as I said, even a few more, they don't do it. I think it's an adverse effect on the remaining 1947 elevation.
No, I heard 20 feet mentioned and 1 and 2 mentioned, but is there any medium opportunity that might do what it needs to do? You say 20 feet, there's a lot of square footage involved that is not producing.
Dan, what's the length
I
of?
was gonna say, I didn't print out the floor plans again, Erin,
Yeah.
sorry.
It's okay.
Maybe I'm looking at where the point is structurally.
Hold on. Do you want the?
Well, that helps a little, there you go. Okay, so essentially, the apartments in the front, yeah, right there, would be probably at least 300 square feet less. And then the other one would be about 500 square feet less. So whether or not those, we'll call them 4 units, get reduced to 2 units of just the full front. Because you can see where the staircase kind of protrudes in there. That's kind of the element that becomes the end of the solid section of the Pine Street elevation as a reference point. Is that clear? So that so that point right there, and then you take 1 bay back where those windows are, where the bedroom is and the bathroom, full bath are on the lower right section. That would be about 20 feet, I think, back. Can you zoom in on that dimension at the top? Sorry, I don't know if that's
Okay.
possible. Upper right corner is at 18, 20, is that 20?
So this is, yeah,
That's 20. So again, if you took a slice back to the economics of it, you're definitely losing 2 apartments per floor. I can't see those 2 units being very feasible as studios of about 400 square feet if that building was pulled back, if that wall was pulled back.
To me, it kinda looks like you're only losing one.
How's
But
that?
if you backed it up 20 feet, you cut it right there, you're losing one unit.
On each floor?
Yeah.
Times 2, that's what I meant.
Oh, times two, so two.
Yeah. So there's still, so that's the economics of it. And whether or not that can, the owner, would be understanding of that, I can't see them maintaining the same unit count. 'Cause you don't wanna make a studio at that front, I don't think, section of the building. I think you wanna make one significant 2-bedroom unit or something.
We're pushing this back 20 feet as Marilyn suggests. Would it,
Well, that was arbitrary, I mean,
That was
let's look at the elevation, because,
yeah, well, I hear you.
Okay.
Would that throw,
Taking away
throw
4
this
units.
project, would it
So-
throw this project out of the
I
water?
think my client's probably gonna say that 2 units throws it out, so, he's kicking me under the table right now. He's not here. So, but honestly, it is a matter of economics for anything. Nobody's done anything with this building in, 10 years, and again, I don't know, I'm just bringing that up. It is a matter of economics to make it feasible, to keep that unit count. So, is it a deal breaker? I'd say 50-50.
How many units are there, residential units in the whole thing?
20, there are 20 units.
20.
The
So-
5th floor unit is the full width of the building, isn't it?
The 5th floor still goes back, yeah, but that would be substantially reduced. So that'd be, I'm sorry, you're correct. That would be modified.
So there's, if any adjustment to that front wall affects
1
3
unit could be,
units.
1 unit would be reduced. I think that's what we're going back to, right? They'd both be full, across the full amount. Yeah, that 2-bedroom would now be probably a large 1-bedroom. But I can't see taking it all the way back to the stair. I guess I'm getting back to, I can't see taking it all the way back to the stair. Because that would be the full 3 units, at least 2 of the 3 units would be gone.
If you eliminated one and you put it sideways instead of,
Right,
that would be a.
they'd both be across the full front, and
Yeah.
we'd eliminate one of the 2 on the 4th floor.
can you go to the elevation so we can fix that stair in our heads where it is
The
now?
stairs, the end of the solid set, right, yep, pretty much, it's about 2 feet. That's the stair, but then the edge of the brown is about 2 feet past the edge of the stair, I believe. If we're calling that color brown,
Which are you calling brown?
the top right
The
there.
top?
Yeah.
And so that those, the
The
two
edge of the
stacked
brown to the
vertical-
gray is about, the stair to the gray is about 2 feet. 2 to 3 feet, I'm assuming.
Right where the cursor was?
Yep, exactly, right there.
And that's the east edge of the stair?
Pretty, I believe so, yeah. And my feeling would be if we did that, and again, speaking out of line, but we would continue the gray a little further back, maybe covering the stair or something, because I don't want that to look like a sliver either, proportionally, I think that would look odd.
I'm sorry,
The gray
I
being,
don't-
sorry,
yeah, so what I see is gray, tan, and brown, but I don't know
Correct.
that that's the same way you're
yeah,
doing.
gray, tan, and brown.
Okay,
So the gray would, if we chopped off the right portion of the gray, I would still want more gray than covering over some of that tan going west. You know what I'm saying there? Just because it would be in proportion to the gray in the front, which would be a cube. essentially sitting on top of the addition.
Well, I think you've worked, I mean, you know how to work out the elevation.
Yeah, but it's a
You've
solid
done
wall
that.
no matter what, it's a staircase.
Okay.
So we're not gonna put fenestration there.
Hey, Marilyn, let me ask you a question. How much are you thinking? Back here? Here?
I can't really
Cause
answer-
it can go, I mean, 3 feet, I'm not good with
That's about
measurements.
foot.
What's this?
It's 5 by 10 feet.
Because
10
if you
plus
go
feet.
back too far, it's really gonna look crazy.
Why?
I don't know, you look at this building, to me, it'll be more like an L shape,
Yes,
you know? And,
but the primary elevation that I'm
Yeah, this
focused
one
on
here.
is the east elevation.
yep, mm-hmm.
I don't go to that.
But if you still push it back, that east elevation will read, the original building will still pop out more at you. Because if you put it back, well, oh shit, what happened?
Oh, so,
No. If you push it back, if you get rid of that whole gray section, which you can't do, it's just not gonna look good to me.
So it seems like there's two different ideas that we're talking about. I'm talking about pushing the front elevation back so that it is not very visible from the public rights of way. And for me, it would be someone standing the old way on the street and getting some line of sights to understand what distance that is. I think what you're talking about, to me, feels like a mitigation measure. So do I think that the detailing is such that the original building is evident, that part of it's new construction and part of it's original? Yes, but I don't think,
You just don't wanna see it from.
I just don't wanna see it. That's right.
Even though it could work, pushed back, and the original building, the existing building can still read as the more prominent building
That's
with the addition, still with the addition pushed back,
correct.
it's still visible. It can work, but I hear what you're saying,
So some line of sight drawings or some mock-ups kind of on site, however that might be, is, I don't know the magic number. I can take a guess at it having gone to the site. But again, it would be some drawing exercises that put someone at 5 feet across Pearl and
You know, if
some
you're
different
on,
locations.
you're on the first block of South Pearl, it wouldn't be the issue because you wouldn't see much of anything. It's a narrow,
Right.
very narrow street.
Right there.
The thing is that North Pearl is double the width. So that if you're on the opposite side from the building, you're gonna be very much aware of what is going on there.
Well, you've got the added issue of Pine Street, which wasn't there, drives down the hill, so you can get a very long view of this building
Yeah.
as you go down the hill.
My
So-
biggest disappointment with this is looking at that. I wish there had been some more creative thing to do to, just the 3 existing, the basement and the 2 above. That's the best we can do, particularly on the ground level.
Particularly in the ground level.
Particularly on the ground level, you walk around, if you keep as much as you can of the original 1927 building, you walk around the corner, it's a basement. And it's a garage basement, not a,
That's a good point.
I mean, to me,
I mean, the unfortunate thing is the 27 building was conceived as an infill, and it was just the front facade.
right,
And now it's a volume that's exposed that was never intended to be exposed. So you're dealing with a different animal. So you've got the facade, which is the mid-century modern or international style approach to putting an infill between a whole continuous row of buildings. We have a whole new paradigm here with this building. I don't disagree that pushing it back would help. I don't think you can push it back far enough for it to disappear. I just don't think that's possible. So what is the magic number that mitigates some of the compromise of that, basically that cardboard elevation that we're looking at.
I'd like to add to reinforce what you just spoke to, which is, yes, it's an interesting situation that we're wrestling with for all the reasons that you just spoke to, but all of this solid mass at the sidewalk level does nothing to activate our downtown. We've just gotta, it's like it is now, so it's not an active contribution in terms, it may be appropriate from an architectural standpoint, because it's a lighter wall, et cetera, but that's a pretty tall, solid wall, and instead, isn't there an opportunity, which I think is what you're asking about?
You look to the left, you look at the back of St. Mary's Church,
Yes.
you know, it's just, it's offensive to South Pearl Street and North Pearl Street with the shopping street.
Mhm.
But you're also, in any direction you go in, it's tough. Now, if, for example, if you could look at that basement level, if you put in a shallow shop window and you made it available, like the Albany Institute, to go in and put something within 4 feet or less, that when you're walking, you've got something to look at that's interesting. If it's not necessarily a mural, but maybe an historic sign of some type or something that changes exhibitry. You know, when you're walking, you want to walk next to a building. Whereas here, you want to run so you can get to someplace else, you're going to be happier. Now, that's a big blank section. And I like the idea of splitting the color, you know, breaking it up in colors one way or another. But that's a huge, massive blank wall. And, you know, and you start with the parent limestone on the main shopping street, and you turn around and it looks like an alleyway. I don't mean necessarily it has to wrap around with limestone, but it should be something that people would feel good about looking at. And, you know, windows that are used to show things, like even open up from the front, that somebody could rent them for merchandise or for artwork or for history or for anything.
And the ground floor is intended to be commercial.
Correct.
So commercial didn't wrap the corner, but we have the opportunity somehow to wrap the corner. We don't have a nice wide sidewalk here.
Right.
Do you have the site plan? There's a Dan Hirschberg's plan.
Well, you're also gonna look at it on the other side. It doesn't mean you have to.
Yeah, I mean, it's a uniform width sidewalk, so you don't really have a whole lot.
Well, unless you're walking on the opposite side where the parking lot is, you know, the parking garage, and going up that way. I think most people tend to walk on the one that's not shown there, the one that's on the south side of the street. And if you looked out and saw something that was attractive or, you know, got you thinking about whatever their product or something that's going on, that'd be something would keep your eye and you'd look at it. And most people do walk on the south side, they don't walk on the north side.
You know, we know why. Dark, solid,
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah.
Can we see the first floor plan, please? I guess that was what I was trying to get at, is given all these changes, even on that wall, how does the design and the modifications
So there is a staircase here.
contribute to the downtown area? How does it enliven it, and how, and,
If you even dressed up the lower third,
Mhm.
that's a third of the city block.
I mean, the applicant is proposing to maintain all that material, so, you know, that would kind of be outside of the application, introducing new material, and the commission should not be designing a table and requiring requiring the applicant to do something to a section of the building that they're not proposing to do anything to.
Can I just mention something that maybe is part of the conversation anyway? But I think we're recognizing two different eras in terms of a design philosophy from the way I see the project. That we're recognizing and respecting the existing building, and we're recognizing a new use for the existing building. And that's something that we're trying to be honest with, that we're not necessarily copying the existing building that's there, yet we're putting in addition to recognize a new use being residential primarily, still office as a mixed use, still retail as part of that mixed use, but from a standpoint of a change, that we're being honest about saying, now we have a new sort of overall building in 2023, and here was an addition that we're putting onto it to say, okay, this is part of 2023, and we're still maintaining as much as possible of 1947 and then 19, whenever they cut through, 60 or 70, whatever. So there's three eras in this building, really, and I think to change the base of it significantly is, for lack of a better term, bastardizing that portion of the building, even though it might look better. I don't think it's as honest as what we're trying to do, which is maintaining what is essentially a blank wall, unfortunately. I mean, again, you know, you look at the Albany Savings Bank on State, and that's one of our worst examples in Albany of a blank wall as you walk down State. So I think Albany has some real character blank walls. But other than that, this is one of them. And I think that anytime we're trying to introduce like a new language into this building, it should be really attributed to the addition that we're doing, not necessarily to the original building. I think some of the discussion is, although I like it, I don't think it's, you know, I would love to see more glass on the first floor and so, but then what are we left with as a base to this building? And I think what we've done is maintained the character of the base with some very modest modifications in terms of the fenestration, and we've certainly we've respected the original building on Pearl, and we're recognizing that this is a new building in 2023, of which we're adding apartments to it, or we're changing the function subtly. I'd like to emphasize that word. And anything else is saying that we're putting maybe more deference, although I respect the building as a, you know, a corner project, but really as a corner building, it doesn't have all the character of a good corner building, you know, because it doesn't wrap the corner. And I just recall that, you know, I hearken back to a lecture I heard years ago about what the importance of corner buildings are. And this unfortunately doesn't really respect that. I think we've got two buildings or two faces here, unfortunately. And we're not, our project is sort of letting that be. So I just wanted to bring that up. I don't think we can go back into the original building as much as we'd like to.
The problem with your thinking, which I appreciate, is it sounds as if you're saying, and we have a 1960s/1970s wall.
Right.
But what I didn't follow is if that is a significant part of this structure, then I think you've already stepped away from that when you changed all of the fenestration on the lower level. So I don't
think it was
find
balanced.
consistent, I
Yeah,
don't
no,
find consistent saying, yeah, we've got this long wall, but it's kind of got its own presence here and that's what we have. But then you've gone to make changes to make it both functionally and from a design design standpoint, architecturally, more to modernize it, and yet you stopped at the lower level. So I think there's two arguments there of thought kind of twisting. But I appreciate.
I think with the reason we modified the wall is to bring it together with the addition. I mean, we've obviously done that from a vertical penetration standpoint, up line, going down. From a functional standpoint, I think that from the basement or the first floor level, we have not altered it because that's just the way it was. That's the way, you know, it's a sloped site. It's not like, you know, it's necessarily an area where you would have a lot more glass. You could turn the corner again with glass, but that really takes away from the two-walled concept that I'm getting back to of the existing building that I don't think we're disrespecting. So it's a discussion. I mean, I don't disagree, Marilyn, with what you're saying. We have modified the elevation, but I think it's in keeping with creating a more harmonious overall building, which is a, you know, artistic license or something we felt like should be still done in order to make it look more, a little bit more attractive, a little bit more like windows that seem to make sense versus the other ones. Does that make sense? Because the other ones really don't work. I don't even know where they came from in terms of the jogs and everything there, but anyway.
Is there any exterior lighting plan for Pine Street, or something to light up that beautiful brick?
There could be. I wouldn't have any issues at all with that.
That did come up at the site visit, and I believe, you know, I think Ryan had said that they would consider
Yeah,
a
up and
lighting,
down light or some type
lighting
of.
for that
no,
side
you know,
elevation.
It does break it up if you put something right on it.
Right.
At night.
At night.
Functionally, there's not a lot you can do to animate the facade. Given the, you know, the slope of the sidewalk and
Well, I'm not sure I'm not sure where we are relative to this facade. Are we accepting it in its 1960s, 1970s form? And are the proposed changes consistent with that? Are we looking to maximize its contribution to the the streetscape and to activate that corner? In which case, and if we would speak to that, I'd say, for example, that the easternmost windows, that they're higher, the sill height on the lowest windows, that it's higher where there's that much masonry below it, doesn't help. And in fact, if anything, the windows would get taller as they came down. So I'm not sure, John, I don't know the framework yet, we're reviewing
Well,
this.
there's a step in the floor there. It steps up.
Okay, but
Yeah,
you
I'm
could
just saying
architect,
that,
you could work
yeah.
through that. So I'm not sure really how we're framing where, you know, it's an interesting discussion, but I
Yeah.
don't quite
You
know
could
where.
even put panel, assuming that you'll have a step up or down. If the windows on the bottom that have it, if they had something that brought them down to the same sill level, it could be a panel. Wouldn't necessarily have to be a glass window. Obviously, you couldn't do that. You'd be looking at the floor head through the side. On the other hand, you could put a frame and a panel that would continue to make it look at all three of them, of the two triple windows, that they would go down and meet the sill, and they would look less disoriented.
well, the second floor is a law office, correct?
Yes.
And whatever is going on in that eastern portion of the building, I mean, could those windows go right to the floor as the limiting factor? And, you know, more of it, so that that's a real kind of a transparent element
I
in that
think
part
he's
of the
saying
building.
that
And it's, I mean, there's really nothing that requires them to match the windows on the third floor above,
No,
because that's residential.
Yeah, come down another 2 feet, just on the second floor. But then you would have it,
you might have to do it as a panel wall because of,
well, it's right to the floor, would be about 2 feet of glass.
Oh.
But then that would not necessarily be the same thing you'd wanna do on the third floor, even though,
no. No, that's all right.
On the third floor is residential, so we
Right.
recognize that's a different occupancy, different use.
That would be an improvement if those bottom ones match the sill on that second floor.
So I had a question relating to what Marilyn was saying in terms of philosophically, I mean, if we're, sort of the sorts of changes that it sounds like we're suggesting are the sorts of things that we've said when we're reviewing new construction in a historic district. If we're looking at that side as part of the historic building, which if I'm interpreting your question, what you said was sort of what you were saying, are we interpreting that Pine Street elevation as part of the historic building?
I picked up on,
Yeah.
I thought where Dan was going.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess that's, to me, that's sort of the, I mean, it's over 50 years old,
And so we should.
so we should.
Right.
We could talk about, are we talking about the period of significance in the district? Are we, if we're talking about that elevation as contributing to the historic district and worthy of preservation, then we have to have an entirely different discussion because the sorts of changes that they made to the windows, we wouldn't approve in a historic building. So that seems like a very important question we have to answer. So are we reviewing the Pine Street elevation as though it's new construction, non-contributing? Or are we saying that that elevation is contributing because it's period to 1969 or whenever that elevation was built, which is prior to 1973? But that might also be outside of the period of significance of the district. And my hunch is that the entire building might be outside the period of significance of the district. And I don't actually know offhand what our ordinance says.
We have an expanded district. Can you find that easily, right?
Yeah, so it was, in the original, district, it was considered an intrusion to the district.
Okay.
When the district expansion went through last year, they went through and they reclassified a number of structures that had either been considered, outside of the period of significance or their building style wasn't contributing to the district. So this building was reclassified from non-contributing to contributing. The building description does not address when the alterations to that Pine Street building, I'm just trying to look there,
Is this attached?
were made to the
right,
building, but it
No.
was done after the neighboring structure acknowledged when they cut Pine Street all the way through to South Street.
When they looked back at the district, are you talking about the local district or the national, did they change the period of significance of the district?
Let me see if I can find it. I'm sure that they had.
So now you've got
Had to.
another two-part question. What is the period of significance of the National Register District and what is the period of significance of the local district? And
The
we-
description for that building is a 3-story commercial building of reinforced concrete and brick construction, flat roofed, erected above a rectangular plan in international style idiom with street exposure on North Curl Street, east elevation, Pine Street, south elevation, and on Chapel Street, west elevation, where the building presents as 2 stories given the grade differential. The North Curl Street elevation, the principal one, was severely conceived and consists of large glazed storefronts at street level in addition to 2 entrances, one with paired doors. The second and third stories are lighted by rectangular-shaped window bands with both fixed glazing and smaller operable casements. That elevation is sheathed with cast stone panels which give way on the adjacent Pine Street elevation to reddish-brown brick laid in running bond, punctuated by window bands with both fixed and operable units. This building served the needs of Flaw and Company from the time of its completion until 1976. So that's the text of the
And then,
nomination.
Of the local nomination?
no,
No.
the
This
National
is
Register.
the expansion of the
The
district.
period of significance for the National Register is 1815 to 1973.
Okay, but that's not our local,
So the local, here's the thing with the Albany Historic District is that the applications for the buildings generally are based off of the National Register nominations.
okay,
Because a lot of the local designations previously were done after the National Register went through. They took that report and put it forward for local designation.
so are we justified, I suppose this is like council, I don't know. Does that mean we should, it sounds to me like, so the question is this would then fall into the National Register period of significance, which means that we should consider it contributing, which changes the discussion we're having.
Yes, but we don't know the date, do we? Have we established the date that Chapel's,
Pine Street
or that
exposed
Pine
it.
Street was exposed? I mean, that's essential to this conversation.
Well, I was guessing it was before, is it before 1973?
Do you know, Jack?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. It'd be real close.
Well, we should find out. Real close is a big distinction potentially in this conversation.
When it was cut through, you mean?
Yeah.
When that side elevation was
Yeah.
built that way, because that date hinges on how we consider it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what year it was. Maybe somebody knows. You can find out from the city
Dan
records
Hirschberg
when that
probably
was done.
knows.
I mean, that was a major project.
Yeah.
I just think we can't, I think we can't address it under our guidelines until we know whether it's contributing or not. And to my mind, those bands of windows seem like they would be contributing. They're pretty significant, it's a pretty significant design feature, which sort of mirrors what you see in the, I mean, that, I don't know.
So how, that we're in public hearing, how do we address this question of finding the information that we don't have right here relative to the date of construction of this facade? How do we technically handle that? It's a request for more information?
Yeah, I mean, it would take some research. It's up to the commission whether they feel it's important to possibly defer the application and find that information, or you could take other action this evening.
In my opinion, this information we should have been having this discussion at the last meeting, and it never came up. I guess, that's the way things go. Personally, I don't have any problem with this. I agree with Marilyn, pushing it back would, in my opinion, the way I look at it, it separates old and new by pushing it back further. But it's a building of its time. I mean, it's had its changes, and we're just offering more changes. It doesn't look bad. I think it looks better than, the ribbon is kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I workshop when this was discussed, so, but I feel like taking aesthetics aside, it's, we have a charge. We just need to, that's what I'm wrestling with. On the other hand, if we shouldn't be considering this historic, if I were the client, I'd be saying, well, you should consider this non-contributing. So the National Register versus local question is very, very
And
important.
I would say that the expansion never went through the common council, so the local designation is still running off of the old nomination.
Okay. And the old nomination
This is
had this
is
entire
an
building
intrusion.
as non-contributing.
Correct.
So therefore, I'm asking a legal question. Legally, should we be considering this entire thing non-contributing, which also then addresses
At a
the
local,
addition on the
at a
top?
local level, yes.
So,
So this nomination is still pending, the expansion.
So this nomination went through the state board and the national NPS. It was never considered as a local change, and it never went to the common council as a change to the local designation. So under the local designation, this building would still be considered non-contributing, because we don't just accept the National Register nominations as our designations. They do still have to go through the common council and be officially adopted.
which is a best practice and makes sense.
Correct.
I like that interpretation. It's non-contributing to the side of the building.
The whole building
No,
is
no,
non-contributing.
no.
It's not
I know that.
Yeah. So now whatever the front facade is saying, we
right.
have a whole,
This feels like a really important conversation that's unfortunate falling on this building and project, but it feels very, very significant. And Erin, is there any other counsel that you need or research to confirm that we will treat this as a non-contributing building? And then we would defer this until then?
No, I mean, I know that it never went to the common council, so it's never been officially adopted at the
If
local level.
if it's non-contributing,
So we're still running off of the old,
the whole addition is whatever they wanna do with it. And suggestions are only suggestions.
So if that's the case, the changes to this elevation, do they have an impact on the district? Right, we would still consider that question.
Viewscape for the neighborhood.
which I think goes to lowering the window height and some of those design changes like we made on like the North Pearl and some of that new construction that we talked about, where we wanted more streetscape. Is Historic Albany on this, in this meeting?
they are not, at the previous meeting, they did bring up that they were pleased to see that something was happening with the structure. I think that they were also saying that they did have some concerns, with the impact of the addition on the existing structure, but overall they were pleased to see that, you know, activity was taking place at the building and moving forward with the project at the site.
So back to the possible scenario here that this is not a contributing building, but there are proposed changes that impact the district, and we've talked about that on this south elevation. Can we get back to those photographs that would help us evaluate showing the front facade and kind of the corner, because then maybe the question that we're framing is, what is the impact of this addition on other historic buildings? Right, that's the That's our charge. If we saw new construction, or we would say, what's its impact on an existing historic district or a building.
Right.
So some of those photographs might be helpful.
When you're talking about the massing, okay. Yeah, we didn't, that front elevation drawing does not show the entirety of the building. That's two buildings away to the north, it's cut off, so, from a scale standpoint, is that?
Well, that's helpful, I think, in the context of this conversation, this piece of the conversation. What we know is that the adjacent building is obscured from the south, right? The view of the adjacent building is obscured from the south. So that's an impact on an historic building. So I guess,
We're talking about the rooftop construction from this view
yes,
is obscured, yeah.
That car's in the north
not from this,
corner.
from the, if I was south and east of this building on the right, that it would be impacted. So is the addition and the changes, are they both new construction that we are now kind of, again, we're trying to frame the context where we're reviewing this. So now are we considering the addition and its impact on the historic buildings? A, and B, do we consider the alterations to the south elevation and the impact on the historic district, as if it were new construction or a major modification?
Generally, the way in which the historic research overlay guidelines are written, additions are considered alterations to existing structures and not new construction. So they would fall under the general guidelines, and then depending on if there's changes to the existing structure, the rehabilitation guidelines.
But the rehabilitation guidelines are only if it's a contributing structure. I don't see any issue with the addition, I mean, taking away my sadness over losing the design feature, you know, I don't, you know, the building on the corner also has additions on, you know, vertical additions, and it sort of mirrors that. I don't, contextually, I don't see any issue with the addition as it's presented.
The building does fall within the scale or the height of a lot of the surrounding structures. The building is cut off here, but is 6 stories. There are buildings across the street that are 5 to 7 stories. So, you know, at least
On the
within,
other side of Pine Street, or
and then you have
Pine
Tenant
Street,
Plaza,
you've
yeah, which is
17 stories.
yeah.
Look at it this way, it could have been even taller on the Richard line.
I mean, I guess the other thing too with an addition like this, I mean, who knows what could happen down the road, but it could be reversible to the structure and remove without at least the 2 upper floors. I mean,
I don't
It's
think
not
that's really what
it's not demolition. It's not demolition, you know, they're not taking off like the bottom half of the structure, so to build up.
Visually, I think it anchors that corner
Yeah.
a lot better
Yeah, I don't
with
have
with
any,
the added 2 floors.
if I'm changing the lens with which I'm looking at this, But I think, Danny, your suggestion to, like, what you were saying about lowering the window height, making those windows taller, lowering the sill on the second floor and that front on the Pine Street side, and whatever could possibly be done to activate the ground floor level, I think would be really helpful.
And permissible,
In principle.
and permissible. And
Oh,
allowed.
well, I'm not making a motion.
Okay, I'm just wondering, you know, if we discuss it on the first floor, we really having a discussion. That would be okay. If we did provide more glazing or make it more transparent, if it, you know,
And met the sill.
if it meant your guidelines to get more glass on the facade, you'd be okay with doing that. The board would be okay with doing that.
I personally think putting a window between the door and the Pearl Street on that Pine Street side, some kind of glazing there
Right.
would be very good.
Okay.
I can't speak for the other commissioners, but
And at the same time, the middle bank of windows, you could drop the sills as those follow the slope down.
Marilyn, when you said that, do you mean
Which middle bank?
these?
Second.
Those,
Second floor.
That group?
Mhm.
That would be below the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
The floor steps up past.
I'm just saying.
just
kind of funny.
We were just talking about the two windows on the east side.
Triple sets.
Those two would be dropped down. Yeah.
Okay.
They can't meet the sill of the center group of windows, but they can drop those to the floor, you think?
Yeah.
and that would be an improvement.
Well, I think there's two ideas floating around. One is to increase the height by dropping the sill of those existing second floor windows. But in addition, Erin, what you had spoken to was another level of windows that came down to the sidewalk level, is that
At the
right?
corner, towards the corner.
Me, Erin?
Like
Yes,
store,
I'm sorry, you Erin,
like storefront window.
like storefront windows.
Yeah, between, yeah, right where
Yeah.
Erin Glennon's hand is on the, a window there,
Mhm.
which, looking at the floor plan, that's really the only place there could be a window.
Yeah, because there's a
Yeah,
door,
because
the staircase on the
To
other
the
side.
right of the door, it's all staircase.
Yeah.
Or to the left of the door.
Would you want it the same height as the storefront on North Pearl Street side? So it'd be like just a wraparound? I don't know how tall.
Well, there's a strong corner though on Pearl. Don't forget, we're not wrapping. Stone right there, isn't it?
Right, okay, you
Yeah.
want wrapping.
But you have a height, I
But
mean,
you-
The
With that
eye,
height.
the eye would wrap. Yeah,
Mhm.
essentially, right. We could look at that.
Yeah, I think
With
that
so
would be
much
good.
consideration that still could be put towards this project, should we just not table this for another discussion, or do we just?
I'd like to recommend that we table it and just confirm the context in which we're reviewing this. Is it a certificate of appropriateness? What explicitly do our regs tell us that we should be considering relative to all these different pieces? And and as a total aside, I would ask what we need to do to get the district boundaries to the common council. This is kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, that- I mean, I can't speak to the timing of that.
I'm just hoping that if they don't know it's coming, they wouldn't know to ask, so that we recommended that go forward.
So just to clarify, you wanna clarify what your role is in determining what you can review? Like what you're allowed to review? Okay, so I have to express that to my client. So I just wanna, unless you're gonna formalize it in some manner, other than our discussion right now. But with these suggestions, we can propose something for your review, no matter what.
But as long as you know and your client knows, if we get a different answer back from the city of Albany than the one we have here,
Mhm.
everything changes.
Right. Well, for
Which
now,
is
we're not.
so unfortunate,
No.
but I think that it probably won't change, but to Marilyn's point, we wanna just make absolutely certain, because we have a charge.
Sure, understood.
Well, I make a motion that we table the project until we have more information, to consider the project.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
It seems to me the only thing that we really have a strong disagreement on, and I think there's things like raising down to the sill level as close as you could. That's not a problem. We're stuck with that wall being exposed, and it was never intended to. But where the real disagreement is going on here is, can you take that new addition and get a more apparent recess going in, whether it's 5, 10, or 15 feet, that having a foot isn't going to do it. And I think
I mean, that's another avenue of investigation.
I don't actually have a very strong bias on it, because I have a feeling most people won't even look up and see it, but what our principle is usually that you make it very clear that it's something new, something different from the original building. We do that all the time with color and all the time with material and so on and so forth. The question is the correct way to do it, if we have jurisdiction to do so, to get a more obvious recess. And how much would that be? And I can, from what I'm hearing, is Danny's feeling is the client would have a lot of problems with a serious recess there for financial reasons.
Correct.
But a modest recess may be feasible with some minor adjustment, and then that partially mitigates the issue. I mean, you have the benefit of possible terrace out there.
Right.
For those two apartments, which would be a nice feature.
I mean, I see part of the addition as a lost opportunity to do something really special. You know, even with that existing glass that runs parallel this way, and something, some kind of awning, you get to different things in that. I mean, it just, it's all driven by economics and,
A lot of it's driven by filling an envelope. It's a development envelope. Filling.
I think there's a bit of it that's a shame, and that's what kind of drives our aesthetic in our downtown. I don't know. But
So there's big block apartment buildings going up around town. Same thing. Well, we have a motion, and Danny would like to certainly encourage you to take a look at these items as we diligently look at the status and how the regulations govern the review of the building. In my opinion, it probably still remains a non-contributing building, so and it's not likely to change anytime soon legally. So we're going to be looking at it under that lens unless something does change pretty quickly.
So the guidance in that in that scenario that'll be helpful is the specific language relative to our review of an addition, as Erin referenced, and also where the changes to the wall, what's the framework that we're evaluating that effort. It's not quite an addition, it's a major undertaking, so where does that fit?
Well, to not belabor this any longer, I will call this to a vote so that we can move on with our agenda. All those in favor of the motion to defer the application?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Danny, good luck.
Thank you. Okay, that's helpful. See you next month.
Okay, next item on the agenda is 419 Clinton Avenue, New Church of Christ, in Clinton Avenue, North Park Street, Clinton Square Historic District, and this is the replacement of the historic slate roof that we discussed 3 weeks ago.
Yes, so, the applicant is here. At the last meeting, we had discussed, the property owners are proposing to replace the existing historic slate roof, that's severely deteriorated, with a new asphalt shingle roof, in a gray color that, matches the existing slate fairly closely. The damage from the deterioration of the roof where there are holes where the slates are missing, is causing water infiltration and severe damage to the interior of the structure. Needed to say that, one of the things that her business does is, slate repair and new slate installs, based on the slopes of the roof, height, and things like that, more or less it's infeasible to install new slate. And financially, it's a hardship for the property owners. If there are any questions.
Motion?
I make a motion to approve the asphalt shingles, provided the asphalt shingles matches that color range.
Castle Gray?
A second.
Now you're also gonna be replacing a lot of roofing boards too, right? Are you gonna put new roofing boards on top of the existing? Because the existing is like a ribbon type of.
Yeah, they don't actually have plywood, they have like a strip,
Yeah,
it's like
batten strips,
batten
yeah.
and strips or something of that nature. It's gonna all have to come off.
And your flashing, what are you gonna use, like the ridge flashing? Are you gonna reuse copper flashing, or are you gonna put new flashing to match the shape of the
We're probably taking everything off, and I don't think that would be aesthetically correct to leave anything behind. I think that just because of the lack of, I guess, maintenance of the church, you know, some churches try to keep, if it's copper flashing or something like that, but I don't think we're gonna be able to keep anything that's original on there, it all has to come off.
And you'll put new metal flashing in?
Oh, yeah.
Is there a fair amount of structural framing that's compromised as well?
I don't think the framing is, there's like literally nothing between the roof, I've been in the third floor, there's nothing in between it, there's damage to their ceiling. I mean, of course, they wanna do that and we're going to help them with that, but I told them we need to first take care of the roof.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the replacement of the roof. And will you be providing samples of the shingles?
I did.
Or do you have them there?
Well, we have, sorry. It is, let me zoom in. It's this castle thread.
Okay. And it's a high performance thick shingle.
It's a 50-year, it's the best line that IKO offers.
What's the, you can go back to the best overall for a second, the best overall
Oh, yes,
photo that you
that.
have. There's some, is that weather?
Yes. There's this one and then I have this one.
Yeah, so there's some cresting there. There's a treatment of the ridges at each of the dormers. Does anyone have any thoughts or concerns about replacement of that just with a vented asphalt shingle versus some sort of metal capping? And then cresting there, is there any other ornamentation?
Well, I don't think you can intermingle metal because there's a ridge vent, there's a like a plastic ridge vent that goes underneath the caps, which allows like breathing and ventilation. So I don't think you can intermingle the two. I mean, I don't know how the two systems would work together. We do metal, but we strictly do complete metal, and then when we do asphalt, we do the caps that come with it, you know, that come with the asphalt. So I don't really know.
The wrought iron stain.
The Ryan, yeah, we have no plans for anything other than the shingle.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have the metal cap flashing on the ridges. You know,
I think
match the profile that's there now, because the material can't.
I don't think there's a problem using a metal cap of sorts on top of the asphalt shingles, so there's some ventilation.
Well, how would it hook to the ridge? There's a piece of like black plastic that goes on top of the ridge, and then the caps for the shingles go over that. So I don't know how that system would work with the shingle system that I have. Is what I'm saying. I would have to look into it. I've never honestly had someone ask to do that. I'd have to. I mean, it's up to the church. They're borrowing money to do this from a bank and a person that is somehow not part of the church and has graciously sponsored this one. So, and I think they're gonna have way more plywood than they anticipated. So I really don't know how much more that they can come out of pocket to salvage on top of not even getting into the work inside. I mean, I could definitely recommend that to them, but I don't know. You know, that's a lot of metal, custom metal that has to be done.
Well, doing the system and this, you know, asphalt shingle based system is a proven system that's probably the most expedient and the best approach in terms of compatibility with the materials.
Right.
And if we're using a slate, a manufactured slate product as a replacement, we have a lot more say over the, you know, the flashings and the other elements that put together. This is a total replacement with a completely new system, different system. And you are gonna need ventilation.
Like I said, like, on the last one, there is a workshop, if it was possible to salvage any of that slate.
We're gonna try to, but it also becomes, you know, we're gonna try and salvage like probably anything near down near like the bottom of the roof, but you know, really
Whatever possible,
safety kind of has to come first with this one.
of course.
But yeah, we're gonna try our best to salvage whatever we can.
Has the church considered any grant funding for this project?
They have said they got denied for it, so I didn't look too far into it. I don't know what they applied for or what they have or haven't. I would assume that they would have tried, but it wasn't part of anything that they asked me to do.
I mean, that's outside of our purview, but there are grant funds that are available.
Yeah, the lady I spoke with after the last meeting gave me a card, and she, I don't know if she spoke to the church, but they did express to us that they did try and they didn't get anything. So I don't know what they tried.
Yeah, you quickly got the Caroline.
Yeah,
Okay, so she probably mentioned Sacred Sites.
yes, she gave me the information.
I know that if they, I had looked at the historical and thinking that maybe they would qualify, but if this would not qualify. And not the original congregation that was in the church, and I don't believe that has any attachment to any either movement within the African American community or any.
It's not a black church in an historic building, it's a historic black congregation built by an African American population.
Which is like the requirement.
Okay, have a motion? Any further comments from anybody? Call to a vote then, all those in favor of permitting the replacement of the roof?
I
Alright,
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
good luck.
There's a couple of cards which you guys
Oh, thank you.
This is the office number. It's
Great.
It's one line.
Oh, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda, 141 Jefferson Street, Center Square, Hudson Park District, and it's window replacement.
Thank you. Kurt Bergman, the owner of 141 Jefferson Street, and this is Rick Canistra from Home Depot, my technical expert. And I did want to again thank the board members that were able to go to the site visit on Tuesday to review the project. The original proposal was to replace the front windows in 141 Jefferson Street, which are wood, original with brand new windows. The second part of the project originally proposed was the side windows of the building to replace them with just three normal sized windows on that side on the two-story building, and then there's three smaller ones that swing inside of various smaller sizes, about 27 to 32 inches, around that range, to replace those. And on that side, they're made up of, let's see, no dividers, 1, 2, and I think 4 to 6 or something. So it's a kind of a combination of there. So after we had some discussion, some creative ideas about what to do and everything, we ended up that we'll keep the front of the building, the original windows, and then I got some information, contractors I'll look into having the front ones rebuilt again, which I had done when I renovated the building in '84. And then the side ones, the larger ones, I think we agreed to use as the proper white trim, vinyl window or Fibrex window material. Those are the main three. And then I believe also the smaller ones would be the vinyl ones. I think that's how we ended up without dividers. Was that right? Because again, the smaller ones are a mismatch of original and remade ones on different sizes and so on, different materials. So that's how we ended up, and it seemed to work for everybody involved. And one thing I did want to mention with rebuilding the front windows instead of replacing them, there was some cost savings to me. And what I would like to eventually do is perhaps replace the rear windows in the building, because that offers a little opportunity to replace the back of the building with vinyl windows. And that was not part of the original proposal, but Rick is going to work up to see if that's cost feasible for me to replace that could file separate one, deciding how that would work.
The replacement of the rear windows, since it's a non-principal facade and it's not visible from a public right of way, that's just a building application.
Yeah, I just got to put a permit into the building.
Oh, okay, good, good. So I think that's where we all ended up and, seemed to work out for everybody.
And we thought it was, we looked at the front windows and they seemed to be in repairable condition. And the owner really twisted his arm, but he suggested repair was more feasible than replacement.
And my brother and I will see.
And we thought we could do a little bit of a switch and have the new windows on the side elevation, the Fibrex, which we've used before, on the 3 larger windows, and the vinyl, which is something we don't recommend on side elevations or visible elevations. But in this case, we thought that it would be okay on the 3 smaller windows. And I think that seems to work. And of course, there's other commissioners that have
It's
to.
just a discussion
It
that I
does.
had while we were on site to open to other commission members' comments. That was the gist of where we were headed with it.
So the,
And we usually get replacement projects and people just don't want to repair their windows at all. And he was nice. Kurt has been, he repaired these windows 40 years ago. And they're still in salvageable condition and he's willing to repair them, keep them going longer, which I consider a big plus. That's why sort of backed off and went to allow him to put new windows on the side of the bridge.
so the proposal, it kind of follows the recommendations of the site visit.
Exactly.
What was the relative cost per window?
It's, well, the front one's
The front 5 ended up costing just under $10,000. The Fibrex for the 3,
No, I was only interested in the breakdown between what you found. You said there was a savings, so you were estimating, I'm sorry, replacement cost versus.
I'm not sure,
I'm sorry, I wasn't.
He's right. I'll be surprised later on.
but the vinyl windows are much more savings. We're gonna end up owing him money back when we get done here. Because the Anderson is a high quality, high priced window.
That's the wood.
That's the 5 front windows.
Yeah. It was-
I mean, you're looking, double the price per window.
If I had to put the ones that we
Just
originally
them?
talked about on the back side, it would have added $7,000 to the project, which I, just couldn't do it. I couldn't
Well,
justify
it would have added, was it 7?
it.
Yeah, 7. So I mean, the project,
7, 9,
the project would have been probably about $30,000.
maybe.
So I'm sorry, to boil it down so I can understand it.
Okay.
Well, I'm
Well,
thinking
I'm
about
not
the
quite
storm.
understanding the question.
So what was the relative cost of the proposed replacement versus you said there was in fact some savings based on your estimated
I
cost
I
of
don't know,
repair?
these,
The problem with it is when we order windows.
Yeah.
I have to make up 2 orders, one for vinyl and one for wood, because I'm ordering from 2 different companies.
Okay,
So his first, it looks like he'll have a savings, with all the proposals, about $3,000 to $4,000.
And that's inclusive of the repair work that you'll now be doing.
That does not include the repair work.
does not,
But
that's
that
a
also-
separate contractor I have to.
It still includes the same number of windows,
Okay,
because now we're doing the back 4, which
Yeah.
we weren't doing before.
Right.
okay.
But I still have a savings of $3,000 to $4,000 for him, over what my first quote, my
Okay.
first 2 quotes were.
So that savings will go toward the repair of the windows on the front of the building and new storm windows for those.
Correct, right, and still be on the better side, dollars.
When you
repair and get new store windows on the front of the building, you can apply for a homeowner tax credit from the
Oh,
state.
oh, okay, oh, thanks.
Apply to them for just that project,
That,
like
just that, right,
the
okay,
front of the building.
Is
and-
that,
Oh,
is that
and
rental
store
property, Aaron?
yeah,
Oh, it is?
Property,
Oh.
yeah.
Never mind.
I know.
I'm so excited.
So
I
close.
lived there for 9 years.
Well, you moved back in for 5 years.
Right, oh, that's too bad.
That's the attorney next
It's a
to
rental
you.
property, it doesn't work.
Here.
So for my own information, do you have a relative cost per window on the front windows? Like what were you anticipating to spend per window versus what you anticipate the repair will be?
Well, what was per window for the front?
Per window for front was basically $2,000 per window.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know, I just, I did receive from Aaron a list of acceptable contractors that have worked in the city, so I have not, approached them yet.
Okay. So, well, interesting to know when you find that.
Yeah,
Yeah, when you find that out. That's great. Thank you.
good, thank you.
Well, I make a
You wanna
motion.
make another motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the window design idea, repairing the front windows on Jefferson and replacing the 3 larger windows with new fabrics 1/1, and replacing the 3 smaller windows with vinyl windows. What are you doing, casements? Are you, for the 3 small, the bathroom window on
Yeah.
top?
Double hung,
In the bathroom.
Okay,
just like the storms are on the outside of that. They're a double hung storm.
okay, right, okay.
I'll second the motion.
Any further comment or questions from the commission? I'll call it to a vote then. All those in favor of the motion?
Alright,
Opposed? Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you, Kurt.
Thank you.
thank you, Kurt.
Good luck with the project.
Thank you for saving those windows.
Okay.
Yes.
Twice now.
That's right.
Twice now, there you go.
I'll be back in another 40 years.
Look forward to it.
You'll still be here.
40 years. 40 years, that's okay, that's great, yeah.
Yeah, I was 5 when I did it.
Child prodigy.
Okay, the last item on the agenda is the South End Scattered Sites Development. And this is a secret declaration, lead agency declaration for the planning board. That we would entertain, recognizing the planning board as the lead agency. One question I have in that is, what is the archaeological review responsibility? Because these are, they're dealing with a number of building sites throughout the South End, most of which probably had buildings and were previously disturbed, but still is.
Yeah, well, I'm going to pretty much just go through each property, and just take a look. I actually, spoke with, the Albany County reviewer at SHPO, who's also reviewing this, just to kind of talk things through, and that's kind of what she's doing too, is just going property by property. It's a huge project. So I'll have something prepared for whenever this project comes to public hearing. What kind of further archaeology will be required for specific properties.
Is that something that's brought to the planning board to impose as a?
It would be circulated to both boards, so being the local commission, and that we have an archaeological resource overlay, the board can require that they do a phase 1A or further investigation, and they would have to produce that and provide that to the HRC. Because this is also being publicly funded, and it's in the South End Historic District, which is on the National Register. It's also going through the State Historic Preservation Office. And depending on what their determination is as well, they may require further archaeological investigation. But all of that would be provided, if it is required, then that would be provided to the commission as part of the review. And then if it's not required, but they do either unearth something or find remains, they would have to then stop the project and go through an archaeological investigation.
Jen, how granular? So if you've got, say, 3 properties, 3 addresses, will it be one kind of investigation from your standpoint?
Well, I mean, and I think this is 39 parcels, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it 39?
Yes.
It is?
39.
So when they're grouped, right?
Right, because some of them are adjacent, I believe,
I
yeah.
think so, yeah, because we saw some larger.
Yeah.
Here, I've got the
I know, I didn't bring any of my stuff with me. So yeah, I believe that we could, hopefully, the lots that are adjacent, could be considered one. I guess it depends on which, the year of the demolition of the building also. That's gonna have to be looked into because the more recent demolition, from what I understand, is much more invasive. So the likelihood of finding any intact archaeological deposits would be very unlikely because of the way that the demolition of the more recent buildings are done.
Sounds like a negative effect, like wouldn't that be an adverse effect of the way the demolitions are done?
Yeah, no, I know. Well, that's what the Albany County reviewer was, explaining to me how she reviews these kinds of projects. And of course, her review doesn't need to match my review, our review, because we're 2 different entities. But it was just nice to hear how she was gonna go about reviewing this project. And she's gotta get her review done for, I think, do we know when this is coming back?
So this will probably come back it came for a concept review, which was the previous meeting. It just went to the planning board on Tuesday, and it has now initiated the seeker review. So we have to wait for comments for the other involved agencies. 30 days. And then, it'll come before the commission for a workshop. So it probably will be back in August, depending on comments that they receive and what that secret determination is, back in August for a workshop. And then they'll proceed on to a public hearing.
So do we make a motion to say
So-
the planning board?
So tonight is just the lead agency consent. At the meeting on Tuesday, the planning board made a motion to act as lead agency for the secret review. So we're just putting forward a motion to either agree with that or put forward another agency as the review. But generally, planning board takes on that role to act as lead agency.
I move to have the lead agency be the Albany Planning Board for secret review.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
I
Opposed? Okay.
I have a question about these demolitions. Has anybody watched, so now, when they do the, say, emergency demos, or they do a demo, they bring in all the big machines, and so clearly they're taking it down to grade, right? And then there's somewhere between foundations or maybe a basement or a sub-basement. Are they pulling out, like now, do you know, have you even watched one of the demos in progress? Do they pull out?
We should, we really,
Or do they pull?
it'd be very informative
Yeah.
to watch a demo.
Well, the ones they just did on Henry Johnson they left it, cause there's the demo where they just leave the pile.
Right.
And then there's the cleaning up, but they leave that pile was there for,
So the
At
pile
least
is,
a week.
yeah, that's sitting there.
Is it still there?
Well, no, they've removed it, but it does have to sit there for a period of time for, like asbestos treatment. So like it has to sit there.
It's not being kept wet unless it's raining.
yeah, what, how does it have to sit there for asbestos?
But it's not amended water.
Hold up one of the processes, I know that it's covered and it sits for a period of time.
And the asbestos goes away.
I don't know.
So that's pretty interesting, but that's a different question. So there's lead and asbestos in there, we know. What happens to that? But that's not my question right now.
Yeah, but
So they take the pile, right, there's a big pile, and then the pile goes away.
Yeah.
So how much of the site is scraped or removed? And it must be filled, right, if there's a.
yeah,
Yeah, they
We
should
should
use like backfill it, yeah.
Itself.
Can we watch them scrape a pile away
So that
someday?
you crush
Ooh.
right up.
I think we should go watch like a demolition. How could we be able to get,
Well, but I think we wanna see them scrape the pile,
So it would be.
cause I've seen the demolition, they're just gonna push it down.
yeah.
But it's the pile
yeah,
scraping.
right, definitely.
I mean,
But they do that,
You know, to what extent do they remove foundation walls, basement slabs?
Right,
I'm sure I
Anything,
could
you know, below
find
grade.
out
yeah,
like the next
yes.
Emergency.
like removal, oh, I don't know.
No,
about that,
seriously,
yeah.
I wanna be there and anybody else
They,
is.
they don't dig them out, they don't dig out
I
the
wouldn't
foundations.
think they do.
No, they don't.
Aaron, you
No,
might know
version
because, or have
Actually
easy
run it
access
over.
to it because
Pounded.
the billings, the scope of work of the.
One person at a time, one person at a time, sorry, go ahead,
The
Mary.
billings or the scope of work, in theory, to the city, might describe what the extent of work that was done.
So what is it?
Right.
Constructions and all these slabs.
I don't know that for the emergency demolitions that the scope is that in depth.
But somebody in the
But-
city must know, because even, think of it this way, if there's an emergency demo that's done, so there's a contract going out for X amount of work, so what level of specification, we don't know, but probably there's an engineering of some sort inspection done at the completion of the work to make sure that it's a safe,
Stable site.
a stable and safe site. So I bet someone in the offices of the city can answer, but we
I can-
still want.
I can
Yeah,
reach
we
out.
still wanna go.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
You know, Chris?
Yeah.
I imagine Rick LaJoy would know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I would
Yeah.
expect, yeah.
yeah.
Right.
The
Because they let
proposed
these
standard
contracts
set,
out,
is that all gonna be
there's gotta
on
be a real
slabs
contract
or?
for it.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that I've
They're
seen
gonna
like
go dig up these found, wow.
I've seen like a couple that have come in with like the notifications and things like that. I mean, they're not, you know, they're curbside bids, so it's not like they're overly like detailed in what they're gonna do. It's
Right.
usually like removal of the building and then removal of debris after a certain period of time or whatnot, so.
But the cost for there to do that, someone knows, because the cost to just take everything down to grade is probably really different than the cost to
Bring in clean fill.
to go in, pull out all the masonry and fill.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to visualize when I've seen them, what machine they're using, cause I feel like it's a scraper, not a digger.
I know when I passed the Henry Johnson one, which they did it over a couple days. I think it was like a digger, but I couldn't figure out where they were putting it because I didn't see any trucks or dumpsters. Oh. I wasn't sure how they even got onto the site, so.
So that's a big excavator they use.
It's, yeah,
Treads, maybe. How do you drive on it? Glad you brought it up.
Well, the nice thing,
Very
well,
good.
regardless of that, the nice thing about what we have here for this project is it's well documented, this neighborhood from the Sanborn maps. So we pretty much know what's under the ground anyway, if it's still there. You know, depending on, you know, whatever these demo methods were, but, you know, so that's the advantage of being in the city, you know, when you're not in a city and don't have any Sanborn map exposure, it is, you know, you're wondering, you're not sure what is there, not necessarily, but, so I'll have more information hopefully next time, when we do this.
There's some time.
What do we need to do to promote moving forward on, not for the current North Pearl Street project, but this whole National Register adoption, expanded district and the current designation, and are there any others like that?
Let me pull it up real quick. I don't believe that there's been any adjustments to other historic districts other than the downtown that I think was done in order for some of these buildings that were being redone in order to access the tax credits. But give me 1 second, I've got it up here.
We'll just keep talking until the rain and.
Yeah.
It's clearing over there.
It's a little bit better.
That's bad. But there you can almost see like sunset.
Okay, so it would be. So once there's an application to designate a historic landmark district or archaeological district, shall be reviewed and decided on by the chief planning official. And then notice of a proposed designation would be sent to all, by registered mail to all owners of each property with proposed designation. Announcing a public hearing by the Historic Resource Commission. Sorry, a second.
So notices would have to go to the property owners
By
whose
registered.
status it was being changed.
Yes, so once the HRC has issued notice of a proposed designation, no building permits for work in the affected area shall be issued until the common council has approved or disapproved the designation. Unless the HRC reviews the permit request according to procedures and criteria for certificate of appropriateness. The HRC shall hold a public hearing before recommending designation of any landmark or historic district.
But the hearing has to go after the notification.
So yeah, we would notify them that we would notify property owners of the public hearing. At the public hearing, it would be a period of public comment and discussion of the designation. And then that evidence is recorded as part of the application. And then that application would, whatever evidence is provided with that designation would then be provided to the city clerk for recommendation of designation for a public hearing, and then that would be presented to the common council at its next scheduled meeting. At which time common council would vote to approve the designation or approve or disapprove. And then that noted, once the common council has voted and notice of designation would be then sent to all the property owners again within that designated area. So we could take the National Register nomination, any supporting evidence, the expansion, and put that forward for consideration as an update to the local designation to the common council. And we would just have to follow the steps of procedure of notifying, scheduling a public hearing, taking the recommendation from the commission from that public hearing, send it to the clerk for them to be able to then put it on an agenda for the common council.
And in order to initiate those steps, do we need to do, have a discussion or motion as a body here, or is that? Also, would that then change, like Danny's project, does that mean then he's stuck and he can't do anything? Or is he already enough in motion?
So he would be in, I believe, and I know previously for designations that I worked on, but they're not within the city of Albany. Generally, if an application is currently under review, that application would continue through the review process. It would only be applied to new applications, but I think we would probably have to look into that just to make sure that we weren't in violation of anything, so. I believe, and I can double check, I think that the HRC can forward an application to designate, so.
Do you have the bandwidth to do that now, and what's your staffing situation?
Me, for both preservation, but we do have 6 other planners.
So it's not really creating a new nomination.
It wouldn't be
it's
creating
just
a new
following
nomination,
the-
right,
It's really sending out the letters and then
Correct.
having all the meetings.
and then supplying that report to the, yeah. Yeah, I just need to double check on making sure who can put forward a designation, but I believe, I think that the HRC can put something forward.
Should we make that now?
Right, like what?
Yeah, let's get it done.
While we're here.
I would say, let me look into it first, and just to make sure that
Like any snap decisions.
How many buildings is in the boundary increase? Do we know?
I'd have to go back and.
Well, yeah, you don't have to look.
Yeah.
I'm just
Could you
curious,
send this a
anybody know?
note or like a link to the boundary increase or something?
It was in the Dropbox.
I did,
Oh,
it was
was?
in the Dropbox, and there was also, it was sent as an attachment to
Okay.
one of the multiple emails I sent out this morning.
Sorry, I missed the Dropbox.
It's okay. I mean,
Oh, there it is.
yeah.
Are there any other district extensions that you've talked about, or we've talked about, or the new districts?
We have talked, I mean, one of the districts that we've, one of the problems has been staffing issues, but, the South Lake Historic District is only a National Register district, but because we are a certified local government, it is a certified district, so they do, it is a local district. I might have got that one. It's local, but because we're a certified local government, they can get tax credits. I think that there is an interest in the Kenwood properties and some of the outbuildings. I know that had been a discussion point of designating at least the outbuildings that still remain on the property. I mean, a good number of our districts are both locally designated as well as on the National Register. There are only probably a handful that are only designated one way or the other, so.
So we should know which ones are National Register and not local, right? We should figure that out as part of this discussion.
I mean, one of the things is it's not always encouraged to just go through
Yeah.
and designate all of your National Register
Yeah.
districts locally.
Yeah.
There are very few National Register districts or even individual properties that aren't
Right.
Yeah.
It's like Jermaine Street.
I remember the last time we had this conversation.
Yeah.
Rack
Can-
Road,
You
yeah,
spoke
go
to
ahead.
it.
So there's only 5 new buildings in this expanded district. According to this, it says number of resources within property do not include previously listed resources in the count. So according to this registration form, we're only talking about 5 additional properties, which is helpful.
That'll be easy.
And we just looked at one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. In terms of workload, that changes.
Well, I think we still have to notify,
But some of these are pretty significant that we should be looking at.
Yeah.
I'd like to put forth a motion to get out in the rain.
It was not contributing.
It wasn't, but now.
Second.
Sorry.
I think they're motioning to adjourn. All those in favor?
Have we heard anything new on the proposal to bury the front steps of City Hall with that proposal that was on?
I've been
I've
thinking
seen
about
nothing other
that,
than
that's
that
frightening, now that the
approved
statue's
sketch that
gone.
It was in the paper at one point.
I heard they were fixing the front steps.
No, that was us.
That was your.
No, I was just
Yeah,
talking to
welcome
somebody.
People doing it.
I thought I had a whole, I don't know who I was talking to, so I don't wanna speak out of
Yep.
turn, but I swear I had a conversation with somebody talking about how they're doing a restoration project of the front steps.
Well, there was.
I mean, they did receive a certificate of appropriateness to repair the front steps.
Right, they did samples
Well,
and a
like-
bunch
We
of.
had a site visit,
That was a
we
couple
met
years
with the
ago,
contractor,
like 2 years
and
ago.
we
And then
saw,
they're doing, that they're repairing them.
that was all repaired.
But the City Hall gave a plan that showed a whole burying of it to make it level so that you could get handicap access, and it was given to Channel 13 by City Hall.
Plaza, right?
It looks terrible.
It's called
I don't
that
want
Yeah.
Plaza
to.
Town.
Wow.
And surrounded by head-on parking, which most people feel is the most dangerous thing in the world. I would assume, since we at least have jurisdiction over the front steps, that we would have heard if something was going to happen.
I don't know, there's an application currently, so.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. There's been no.
That was
Motion
discussion.
to adjourn?
Oh, we do that.
We
They
thought
don't
it was a
need
good
that.
idea.
They lost their quorum.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.